am doing something that's a little bit different because I'm not speaking off the cuff. I'm going to read a brief excerpt from my essay, Redefining the Borders, My Experience of Queerness Horror Fiction, which was published in Gamut magazine earlier this year. My experience of queerness and horror fiction began with A Vampire's Victim. I don't actually recall the first time I read Carmilla, Sheridan Le Fanu's 1872 novella about a lonely lesbian vampire and the girl who falls in love with her. I remember being 14 or 15, already having read the story, regarding it as a kind of validation I didn't fully understand. Le Fanu tells the tale in the first person, narrated by the girl, Laura, which gives it an added air of intimacy. I was a lonely kid myself and spent a lot of time at the library. One day in 1983 or thereabouts, I picked up a collection of essays about horror fiction. I wish to God I could remember the author's name and began reading a piece on Carmilla. My eye slammed to a stop on a sentence that referred to the narrator as he. Now, I didn't know anything misgender or erasure. I just knew I felt a literal pain in my heart, a kind of dull stabbing. I may have made some kind of noise. Memory wants me to add a librarian glancing at me, but that could be embellishment. I was too consumed by rage to care either way. Laura's father refers to her several times as his daughter. Carmilla describes her as a beautiful young lady with golden hair and large blue eyes and lips, your lips, you, as you are here. Her name is Laura, for Christ's sake. But this now nameless critic had apparently found it easier to ignore all that than to imagine that passages like her hot lips traveled along my cheek in kisses, and she would whisper, almost in sobs, "You're mine, you shall be mine, you and I are one forever." To imagine that that might be written by one female character about another. Years later, I would realize that the critic was probably bothered by more than just the possibility of lesbianism. Le Fanu's male characters are largely ineffective, and the action of the story is moved forward by the women due to their love for one another. At the time, I only knew I'd found something rare and important, and this jackass was trying to take it away from me. I flipped to the biographical notes, already planning the letter I would write to shut the stupid SOB down, and was crushed to learn that he was dead. As much as Carmilla meant to me, it wasn't the story I truly wanted because I wasn't a lesbian. I didn't have the vocabulary or the experience to say what I was. I knew I was supposed to be a girl, and I didn't yet know that that was negotiable. I wasn't good at what my peers considered girl stuff, but I wasn't a tomboy either. My favorite movie was Cabaret. All I really knew was that I was some kind of queer. Though that word hadn't yet been fully reclaimed, I liked it for its inclusiveness. I tried to convince myself that I was bisexual, but at heart I knew I wasn't sexually attracted to women. The stories I was most drawn to were those of gay men. It doesn't make any kind of logical sense that a 15-year-old girl growing up in the South should identify with an aging, drug-addicted New York City drag queen. But in Andrew Holleran's 1978 novel, Dancer from the Dance, the drag queen character, Sutherland, tells his young protege, "We are not doomed because we are homosexual, my dear. We are doomed only if we live in despair because of it." I vowed that I wouldn't live in despair because of what I was. But what was I? That's the end of the excerpt. I much later figured out that I was a transgender gay man. Began transition when I was 44 years old, relatively late in life, but it's been the best time of my life since then. My husband is also HIV positive. I'm frankly not convinced that either of us is going to survive another Trump presidency. So for that and so many other reasons, I am going to be voting for Harris and Waltz, and I hope you will too. Thanks so much for listening.